relationship. Then, and now that's the overall, if you will, common Abraham Accords. Now, with each country, if you look at it, the way I tend to look at it is each Abraham Accord is like a triangle. You have Israel and a Muslim country at the base, and you have America at the apex. And in each case, something different is happening. I'll give you some examples. Like with Sudan. They wanted to be taken off the terror list. Okay, and the Sudanese government had done significant things to combat terrorism. By getting them off the terror list, the terror watch list, the United States was able to help them with some basic human needs. They needed grain. They needed. It's a very poor country. So in the case of Sudan, we helped them, kind of end their status as a terrorist pariah. They deserved it. And by the way, it's incredibly important for Israel because most of the arms that were heading up into Hamas were going up through Sudan, through Sinai into Hamas, into the Gaza Strip. So that's Sudan. In the case of Morocco, Morocco had a long-standing territorial dispute with a group called the Polisario in the Western Sahara. We had felt for years that Morocco the world was better off with Morocco having sovereignty over this territory. A lot of other countries didn't recognize that sovereignty. We recognized Morocco's sovereignty over certain parts of the Western Sahara. That was sort of the lubricant that got them, to the table. In the case of UAE, UAE is looking for some advanced weaponry. We said, look, Israel is entitled by law to a qualitative military edge. That assessment will be done by professionals, but clearly to the extent that there are no hostilities and you've normalized with Israel and you have diplomatic relationships, that's certainly going to fare well in the calculus. It may or may not be enough. That's not for us to decide, but that will certainly fare well in the calculus of your relationship with the United States and the United States military. In the case of Bahrain, they were actually the easiest. They didn't ask for. There was nothing in particular that was on the table, but they thought, and I think correctly so, that their people would be advantaged by all the opportunities that stem from the relationship with Israel. Remember that Israel has extraordinary advancements in technology, whether it's food tech, agri-tech, water technology, cyber defense, financial technology. They're a world leader. I would say that in cyber, they may be tied with America. In water technology, they may be number one. So, there's a lot that Israel can provide once these relationships begin to bloom.
As a trading partner, right. Yeah, okay. So, great. Well, that all sounds extremely positive, and it's very interesting to see the commonality, the declaration of peace that's explicit, the mutual recognition of sovereignty, that's a big deal, the cooperation and normalization of political relationships, including the establishment of embassies and the opening of doors to communication, and then the cultural cooperation, which allows, for example, for Israel to be treated and to become a genuine trading partner, which you could see. If Israel is in some sense the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, which I think is a perfectly reasonable way of looking at it, that could be of incalculable economic value for the surrounding Arab people. And so, hooray for that.
Jordan, if you go to Ben Gurion Airport on any particular day today, and you look at the flight board, there are more flights leaving Israel for Abu Dhabi and Dubai than I think almost any other location around the world. It's really extraordinary how this has blossomed over the last couple of years.
Okay. And who do you think? I like to give credit where credit is due, and so we've talked a little bit about the Americans who were signally important in bringing this about, and including in the background, from what I understand, Mike Pence. So who on the side of the UAE, you mentioned some of the leaders there. How about in Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco? Who played a signal role in those countries?
So, I think in Morocco, it was the foreign minister who was at all times taking his instructions from King Mohammed VI. In UAE, they have a very skillful ambassador to the United States named Yusuf Al Otaiba, who really took the lead, I think, on behalf of the UAE, but of course subject to the approval of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, who was the crown prince and the ruler. In Sudan, you know, they had a civilian government and a military government as well. They had to reconcile in order to do this. They've since split. There's since been a military coup in Sudan. The United States, under Biden, doesn't seem to recognize anymore the Abraham Accords with Sudan, but Israel does. And frankly, the military of Sudan continues to support the Abraham Accords, and for Israel's purposes, that's the most important.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so I mean, but you know, this was done and I think you know this intuitively, but this was done at the highest levels of government of every one of the governments. Right.
All right, so let's talk about consequences. So as far as you're concerned, what have been the present consequences of the Abraham Accords as they've rolled out so far?
Well, I think they've done enormous good for American national security, for Israel's national security, and for the national security of all the Sunni nations. Because with this surfacing of diplomatic relations has also come a good deal of additional cooperation with regard to sharing of intelligence. And, you know, when you look at the region and you see Iran as really a threat to everyone, including the United States, it's the largest state sponsor of terrorism anywhere in the world. And so, you know, the winners here are the moderate Sunni nations. The loser is Iran. Iran now has a much more coordinated group of countries with regard to opposing their malign intentions. So that's sort of number one. Number two, I think if we were still in office, I think we would be able to scale these relations to a lot more countries, including, I think, in particular.
Yeah. Well, who? Yeah.
Well, look,
who's next on the list?
Well, look, it could be Oman, it could be Indonesia, but the real big fish is Saudi Arabia. Because Saudi Arabia Saudi Arabia is the leader of the Muslim world. It's the custodian of the two holiest sites in Islam. And I think that we backslid horribly over the last 2 years with Saudi Arabia. And you just saw that over the last couple of days when you saw a very, very unimpressive visit by